Welcome back. Apple hitting an all-time intraday high. It's up to $205 a share now on a 6% jump after initially mixed reactions to its AI announcements. Barclays trader Jeffrey Rand calling it underwhelming. Citi's Atif Malik, though, said it was the best WWDC ever. And perhaps the strongest reaction actually came from Elon Musk. The Tesla and XAI CEO called Apple's implementation an unacceptable security violation and said he'd ban Apple devices from X. This after Microsoft came under fire for the security around its AI recall feature. So how risky are these features really? Let's ask David Kennedy. He's co-founder and chief hacking officer at Binary Defense. David, it's great to see you again. And I'm almost going to ask you to be as wonky as possible here because this is new for a lot of us, but we really need to know. I mean, are they opening up new opportunities for taking information and doing perhaps nefarious things with it?
It's really a double-edged sword. We're going to see a lot of benefits from artificial intelligence. We're going to see a lot of things gained. You know, you look at what Apple did. They're releasing essentially two different models, right? They have their own Apple AI, then they're also partnering with OpenAI in their Siri platform. Now, the big question here is, you know, recall, for example, essentially taking backup and snapshots every few seconds of your machine and storing that locally. That's a huge privacy concern for us. I understand what Microsoft's trying to do, but at the same time, it opens up a whole can of worms. For Elon Musk specifically, you know, he's concerned about his intellectual property. You know, Tesla being one of the largest EV manufacturers in the world, SpaceX, with what they're doing from a research perspective in space and rocket ships. These models, they learn off of your data. So the more you give it and the more you talk to it, the more it learns and it builds off of that. So the potential for intellectual property theft, unintentionally or inadvertently, is definitely there from what they'd be integrating.
But I watched this live stream yesterday. They spent a very long period of time with the little lock symbol talking about how they were able to kind of, now, and again, I don't understand the semantics here, so if you can explain what's really going, they were able to take in your data without storing it or something to that effect. What is the nuance here? What is it that by allowing these apps to talk to each other, what is Apple opening up exactly?
Yeah, so Apple is being kind of tautological a little bit, or saying the same thing twice in just different ways. They have two kind of separate things going on. They have their private compute model, which is going to be their private cloud, which is what they're talking about here. The problem is that your device isn't powerful enough, at least in today's technology, to essentially power AI, right? So when it does things like looking up your latest recipes or trying to figure out what you're trying to ask it, it needs to offload those to servers. And that's what Apple's creating, is this essentially private cloud, which is a great idea. And I just want to emphasize, Apple's been one of the leading prominent folks out there around privacy, your data, you know, consumer data, those types of things. They've really led the charge on that versus Google, which is much more open with what they do with Gemini and everything else. The problem that I think you're running into is that the second part that you have is the partnership with OpenAI. And OpenAI, the way that their models work is that, you know, once you use that data, it then is consumed into their models and it can be used again for other people. Now, it may be anonymized. It may not have your, you know, customer or your personal information on there, but the data that's actually in there can be used by other folks, which could be, you know, potentially intellectual property or sensitive data.
The two parts here are, number one, Apple might have to do some compute on a private cloud. When you say private cloud, does that mean private to me, Kelly?
Yeah. So what actually ends up happening is it's similar to, think of like iMessage, for example, where it's encrypted end to end. Same thing would happen in this case in the private compute model. Your keys would essentially be used with a private server that's essentially allocated to you or spun up as you need it. And that data would be fully encrypted in their private cloud. So there would be no sharing of information. Those models wouldn't be used to train other models. It's essentially your own private model, which is probably one of the first we've seen, you know, of this type of development and technology and security. It's a great privacy feature. Sure. What's happening, though, is that, you know, everybody's was really caught off guard with the progress that OpenAI has made. So they're all behind the curve. You look at the debacle we had with Bard, now Gemini, you know, with Copilot and Microsoft, they had to partner with OpenAI just to be able to get it. Everybody's playing catch up right now, trying to figure out how to leverage AI in their environments, but they're all behind OpenAI right now.
Right.
So it's a catch up piece right now for them.
And that brings us to the second part of this. So as they demonstrated, now when you ask Siri a question, if she can't answer it, she can say, hey, maybe ChatGPT can answer that. And is that what Elon Musk is taking issue with? This exactly the fact that they're bringing OpenAI, which you're inputting information into their system. Is he concerned that the ChatGPT is going to take trade secrets from X or Tesla or what have you?
That's correct. His big concern is specifically the integration with Siri and its use of OpenAI, and which could be used to be shared with other models and things like that. So that part right there, while the data may be anonymized not to an individual person, the type of data that you're inputting in there is used, collectively across, millions of people that are using OpenAI. So it's not really privacy centric in that case with that type of data. So if someone's looking up like, hey, I'm looking up what's the next generation GPU processor for NVIDIA that I could use in Tesla, then that gives an idea of what Tesla's going to be using for the next generation of a processor, for example, internal workings of the company.
Does OpenAI have an answer as to how that information is protected, or does it not have that capability yet?
Well, there are certain things that you can do if you purchase premium subscriptions of OpenAI that the data isn't used for those models. In this case specifically, it's really how OpenAI gets better. It needs data from all sources to get better, to get more refined, to get more accurate with what it's doing. So this is, by design where, by Apple feeding in information through Siri to OpenAI, it gets better with how it responds, its reactions with, human beings from a generative AI perspective. So it's almost needed in order to make the product good. It needs to share that information collectively across everybody. It's how these large language models work, is by learning off of other people and new data sets.
So people are saying this is a self-serving comment by Musk, who has a competing company to OpenAI, XAI, and so on and so forth, and who himself has been collecting user data in Tesla, or all of this. But do you think his concerns are valid? And does OpenAI either need to come up with a way of addressing this for enterprises broadly? Because obviously, I don't think Apple wants companies to start saying no one can bring an iPhone to work.
Yeah, so Apple has done a really great job, historically for privacy. So, I would assume that they're going to continue down that track. I think, there's a lot of bad blood between Elon and Sam and OpenAI. Elon originally being, one of the co-founders of OpenAI, and they've definitely diverged into different locations. So I think a lot of it is just bad blood between the two. His concerns are correct in the sense of the sharing of data and the potential implications, but it's definitely overblown as far as, banning everybody from being able to use it. The chances of somebody using Siri for intellectual property that happens to be learned by the model to then share with somebody else that could be extracted for data seems like a pretty wide edge case that I wouldn't see happening very often. It's still there, but definitely seems to be more of an overreaction to me from my perspective.
All right, interesting. David, great to check in with you. Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
David Kennedy with Binary Defense.